Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with a assortment of birthday cards I made using Glimmer hot foil. So I have the My Favorite Things Impressive Happy Birthday Die-namics. So these are meant to be used in a hot foil system. These are not like die cutting wafer dies. I'm using my Spellbinders Glimmer hot foil because that's what I have. You just need to follow directions for whatever hot foil system you have that works with impressive dies like this. And I'd already plugged it in, got it heated up, set the happy birthday impressive die on there, and then put the foil I wanted to use on there as well. And then I've got my cardstock and then the shims, and I'm going to run this through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And I go pretty slow. This is sped up in editing, but I go pretty slow and I kind of go back and forth over where that impressed die is just to make sure to really press, the foil and everything into the cardstock. Then remove everything. And then I peel off the foil and it's all magical and wonderful. So yeah, I did get foil like on the bottom portion of it. I don't worry about that. My whole plan, I was going to die cut this anyway. But I always have an eraser handy to remove any little bits that I happen to get in areas where I don't want. I also have this little mono sand eraser, and I'll have a link to this sand eraser. The other one is just a regular white eraser. This sand eraser is really nice to have, especially when foiling, because it just helps kind of remove those little bits here and there, especially if I'm using very detailed ones that, the foil just wants to get pressed up where it's not supposed to. I don't press very hard with the sand eraser. I just lightly, very lightly, brush the sand eraser on the areas where I don't want the foil, and it takes it right off. So I'm doing multiples because while I've got everything out, why not? And I was like, plus I was experimenting with different colors. So the first one I did gold foil, and I'm also using my Favorite Things rectangle STAX Die-namics. So I'm using both sets. I just interchange them depending on the size of the layer I want. So I'm kind of going back and forth between foiling and die cutting and all that. So while the second one was heating up, I die cut the first one with one of the rectangle dies. And then, I press the timer. It's heated up enough, so now I can run this through. And I just use white cardstock for all of these. I am going to need to start experimenting more with the hot foil and different colors of cardstock and all that sort of stuff. One thing at a time, though. But I did the exact same thing. I ran it through my die cut machine, slowly back and forth to impress it. This one I used, this is bright pink Glimmer foil, which is another win in my books. I love the color. So I did that one. Same thing, removed any little bit of excess, and then I'm going to die cut it anyway to remove those bits on the bottom, so I don't worry about that. And then as a final run with this, I used the newer rainbow Glimmer foil. I haven't done a haul video in forever. I should, because I've had orders piling up for a long time. This rainbow foil being one of them. I actually ordered 2 rolls of it because I have a feeling I'll use it a lot. And it was my favorite. It just, the colors are so pretty. So that one I ended up die cutting with the big sort of banner die from the Hip Hip Hooray dynamic set. So I die cut the cardstock with that. And then the hip part of the sentiment, I die cut from just scraps of cardstock. I just, all those tiny little scraps that I keep all the tiny ones now. I didn't used to, way back in the day. But nowadays I keep all the little scraps because they're perfect for little things like this, like die cutting. So I die cut those letters from the different colors of scrap cardstock. And then I lined them up on the banner. And then I just used my piece of washi tape to hold everything down. That way I can just flip this over, add my adhesive, which is just some craft tacky glue, just little tiny bits of that, and then I can just flip this back over and adhere all these letters in one pass. This way I'm not, having to do near as much fiddling while the glue is in place, So got those pressed into place and then just carefully removed the washi tape while I'm holding down these letters so that the glue can completely dry. And then the Hooray portion of this wafer die set, I just die cut from black cardstock. The hip I actually die cut twice, so that there's like 2 layers of those letters, just to give it that tiny little bit of dimension. But I didn't do my normal 3 to 4 layer stack just because I didn't want to. So I did that, and then I die cut the HOORAY just from black cardstock, and I just adhered it on top, just like so. And then I had purchased, not too long ago, the Birthday Brights 6x6 pattern paper, because how can you not? It's wonderful. So, oh, and before that, I added just a little star die cut. I grabbed one of my favorite little star wafer die sets. This is a Simon Says Stamp one that came out eons ago, literally years and years ago, but I'll have it linked. It's still available. But I just die cut a star just to fill in that kind of bottom portion of the banner, because it just felt empty. So I did that, and then the pattern paper from the Birthday Brights, I chose the star pattern paper to go with the little die cut star. And I had die cut that with one of the rectangle STAX dies, as well as some black cardstock. So I adhered those together, and then the banner, I'm going to coat the back of it with Simon Says Stamp's Big Mama foam tape. This, for those that aren't aware, this foam tape is thinner than the standard, like the 3M foam tape or the other foam tapes that we generally use. This is about half as thick. So they call it the Big Mama, though, because the roll, it literally is. It's massive. It lasts a super long time. I am only on my second roll of this, and I make a lot of cards, and it's one of my favorite foam tapes. So anyway, coated the back of the banner with that foam tape, adhered it to the pattern paper. And then on the inside of the card, I just grabbed a sentiment from the Birthday Buds clear stamp set. This set is super cute. It's a Birdie Brown set for my favorite things, so of course it's one of my faves. I just haven't used it yet because it's been sold out pretty much across the board, because her sets always sell out because they're super cute. So I just grabbed the sentiment, though, from it and stamped it onto the inside of the card with some VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink. And then I added a strip of that same star pattern paper that was left over from die cutting the panel for the front. So I adhered that, trimmed off the excess, and then I'm going to adhere my card front to my card base with more craft tacky glue. And that finishes off Happy Birthday foiled Happy Birthday card number 1. So after that one, I went super simple with the second card. This is the one I did with the gold foil. And I die cut it with one of the rectangle STAX dies. And then I pulled out the Perfect Fit balloon wafer die. And I die cut it from some purple cardstock. And I actually trimmed the top of that die cut down a bit, because otherwise it would cover up a big chunk of that foiled sentiment and render it useless. So it's a little bit of a shorter balloon. And then I wrapped just some black thread from my stash, wrapped a little bit of black thread around the knot of the balloon, and then adhered the balloon to my card front with that Big Mama foam tape. And then I just tied a little bow with more of the black thread. It was easier to do it separately. And then I just added a dab of the craft tacky glue, pressed the bow into that. And then once it's dry, this glue dries clear and pretty much matte for the most part. I did remove like a little bit of the excess, and then it holds the bow in place, and I don't have to sit and fiddle like with wrapping and tying the thread. So I did that. And then I decided that the card needed just a little something more. So I pulled out one of the Simon Says Stamp sentiment strips set. This one is I don't have the inside out birthday. So there's sentiments for outside of birthday cards and the inside. So I trimmed down the ones I wanted. So the first one was Cue the Confetti. And then the inside one will say, Bring on the cake, open the presents, we're celebrating you today. I thought it was just cute. So I trimmed them down with my paper trimmer, and then I sat there looking at it for the longest time, and I was like, it's just not doing it for me. So I just grabbed a Copic marker from my stash of pink Copic marker and just colored it. So then that way, that just gives it a little something else. It brings a little more color to my card front, and it's not more just kind of, blending in. So I just quickly colored the one for the front, and then while I was at it, I was like, why not color the one for the inside as well? So I just quickly went over that with the Copic marker as well, and then it's just going to be good to go. So after those were colored, the one for the front, I just trimmed down a couple little strips of the Big Mama foam tape, and then popped that onto my card. I also had used the candle pattern paper from that same MFT Birthday Brights paper pack. And then on the inside of the card, I'm using the remainder of that same piece of pattern paper. So I'm going to adhere that into place and then trim off the excess with my scissors. And then I'll adhere that second sentiment strip. And then the inside of the card will be done. And then I'm going to adhere the card front to the card base, and this card front is going to completely cover the card base. So there'll be no border. It's just going to be that candle pattern paper, which again is all rainbow and fabulous, and I love it. So put craft tacky glue on the back of that, flipped it over, adhered this to my card base. So card number 2 is now complete. So then for card number 3, I had ordered the mini cupcake maker Die-namics from MFT, and they've been sitting here for, again, like weeks. They've been sitting here, and I finally, I was like, it is time to start using some of these things I'm purchasing and some of the things that are sent to me. So I pulled this out, and I just die cut scraps, like little tiny wafer die sets like this. This is exactly what these little tiny scraps are for. It's just perfect. So I die cut just a bunch of scraps, some of the same ones I used on the previous card, to make my little cupcake. So I have my little cupcake base and the icing, and I just tape them together with washi tape. And then all the little tiny pieces I had just run through and die cut from like a scrap of pattern paper and scraps of cardstock and whatnot. So I added the little die cut candle to my cupcake. I added a little die cut cherry just kind of sitting off to the side. And then the little tiny sprinkle wafer die. Again, I ran that through with just random little scraps, and then pop those out of the cardstock. And the easiest way to adhere stuff like this is what I was using this whole time, is just my little embellishment wand from Studio Katia, because it just clings to cardstock really nicely. So with something tiny like these little sprinkles, the easiest way to adhere them, I found, was to just add the little tiny dabs of glue to the actual cupcake. And then I just pick up the sprinkle, stick it in, done. Done, perfect. So I added a rainbow, of course, of sprinkles to this little cupcake. And then after these are all adhered, I'll give the glue a couple minutes to dry. And then I can start assembling this entire card. So I made sure that I got one of each color sprinkle on here, just 'cause. And then for the actual card itself, I had a little tiny bit of that candle pattern paper left over. So I just adhered that to the cardstock that I had foiled with that hot pink Glimmer foil. And then I'm just going to adhere my little cupcake to that as well. So I'm going to pop that into place with some craft tacky glue. And then I had die cut some black cardstock, just a size larger than the white cardstock, to give it that little bit of a frame. And I'd also die cut more pattern paper from that Birthday Brights pack. This was just the one that says like happy birthday over and over and over again on it. So I'm going to pop the card front onto that pattern paper with more Big Mama foam tape. And then for this card, I pulled out another stamp because it just went perfectly with this little cupcake. It's the Sprinkled with Love. It's just this one little stamp. So, or big stamp, I guess. This is quite a large stamp. So I lined up my card base inside my Misty again, and then lined up this stamp, and then I'm going to stamp it with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. Normally I would probably stamp this with a Copic friendly ink, because I do use my Copic marker again, but this was an afterthought. So VersaFine ink is not compatible with Copic markers. It will smear. But because I'm aware of that, I just very carefully filled in that little heart with that same Copic marker, just trying really hard not to touch the stamped ink, because it just smears everywhere. It's just not meant to go with alcohol-based markers like that. But for something like this, it was fine. So I did all that, and then I trimmed down this little bit of that same pattern paper that I'm using on the card front. So I trimmed it down into a strip. So again, it says happy birthday over and over. I thought it would just kind of work perfectly with the inside of the card. And then I'm going to adhere that under the stamp sentiment. So once I've got that lined up and stamped, again, trim off the excess with my scissors. And then I can adhere the card front to the card base. And then once this is adhered, all of these cards are complete. So they're all foiled and fun and rainbow colored and just make me happy. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have a supply list. I'll link to all the supplies I used. So you can check that out below, as well as on my blog if you're interested. So just expand the description box directly below the video, and then I've got everything, the link to my blog post, the supply lists, link to all my social media, etc., etc., etc. So you can check that out if you're interested. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I really appreciate the support, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!